Discover the incredible journey of a 5-blind date. What the CEO dad uncovered will inspire you. Jack Thompson, the esteemed CEO of the thriving manufacturing company Thompson Enterprises in Maplewood, was an emblem of success in the business world. His accolades lined the walls of his corner office, but the truth felt suffocating. At home, his teenage daughter, Emma, drifted further away into her own world, and he was left with an unsettling void, a rift forged by missed dinners and neglected conversations. Every day felt like a relentless cycle of board meetings and product launches, the weight of ambition pressing down on him harder than ever. Then, out of nowhere, an idea flickered. Perhaps a blind date could yield a spark that would lead him back to himself and maybe Emma too. Hesitant yet intrigued, he said yes to his coworker's casual suggestion and the paltry 5 price tag. When the evening arrived, Jack found himself sitting across from Lisa at a cozy local cafe. Her eyes radiated warmth, a stark contrast to the clouds outside. As they sipped their coffees, they wove a tapestry of stories. Lisa, a spirited single mother, spoke passionately about her son and dreams of a better life, her voice brimming with resilience. Every word hit home for him, a stark reminder of when ambition coincided with genuine dreams instead of sheer profit margins. In her laughter and determination, he began to see fragments of his younger self, the idealist who had dreamed big without being shackled by the reality of his own ambitions. But as their conversation unfolded, an unsettling thought nagged at him. Could he justify his relentless pursuit of success, especially when it might cost him the connection with Emma? Each missive he had brought home felt heavier with guilt, his heart racing at the thought of how many moments he lost with her while buried in work. And that's when the weight of Lisa's words struck him with a ferocity he hadn't expected. It wasn't merely about success or failure. It was about people, the ones who looked to him for leadership, just like Lisa's son looked to her. Why had he let the corporate world overshadow the very essence of life? Before he could fully process this awakening, the cafe's atmosphere faltered. The news of a factory accident spread like wildfire, eclipsing his revelation with a roaring storm of anxiety. Jack's heart sank. The incident wasn't just a story. It was real. It threatened livelihoods, his own employees, Lisa's friends hanging in the balance like frayed edges of a fraying tapestry. Suddenly, he was thrust into a moral dilemma. Profit margins could be prioritized. His company could easily withstand the fallout. But what of the people working tirelessly to support their families? The humanity he had just begun to reconnect with now felt at risk of being overshadowed once more. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. He was torn, muscles tense with conflicting emotions. If he chose to protect Thompson Enterprises at all costs, what would that make him? A cold businessman? Yet choosing compassion could cripple his company, perhaps costing him everything he worked for. The cafe around them faded, the murmurs of customers turning into a distant hum. Jack's mind raced, the audible clock ticking louder with each passing second. Each option felt laden with consequences he had never before considered. What was once a night meant to spark change now morphed into the crucible of his existence. How could he balance ambition with integrity? Would he, in trying to save what mattered, risk losing it all? The tension was palpable, enveloping him as he prepared to face the hardest choices of his life. Not just for his company, but for his daughter, Emma. Would their newfound connection survive the fork in the road that lay ahead? Jack felt the walls of the cafe close in as the noise around him faded into an anxious murmur. In that swirling sea of uncertainty, a critical realization began to take root. He could no longer continue as the CEO entrenched in numbers and profit margins. The accident was a catalyst, awakening him to the people behind faceless reports, people whose lives were intertwined with his decisions. The air grew stale as he pondered the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. Traditions of quarterly earnings and corporate ascendance suddenly seemed trivial in the face of potential losses. Losses that were not confined to the bottom line but reached deep into the fabric of families and communities. This realization shook him to his core, challenging everything he thought he valued. When he glanced back at Lisa, her face illuminated by the soft lighting of the cafe, he felt a flicker of hope. Had she not faced her own struggles with grace? Her tenacity and compassion were a blueprint for how he could steer his negotiations with more heart. Instead of viewing the dilemma solely as a financial issue, perhaps it could be transformed into an opportunity for profound change, a chance to redefine his role as a leader. Jack's mind raced with emergent plans, yet his resolve wavered. What if his efforts to prioritize compassion alienated shareholders? Would they see him as weak or perhaps overextended? The duality of ambition and authenticity danced chaotically in his mind. He needed clarity, not only for himself but for Emma, who deserved not just her father's presence, but also his engagement as a mentor and guide. He quickly dismissed the code of silence that surrounded corporate misfortunes. The accident required transparency, and he thought about how he could address his employees, how to convey the urgency to inform them that their safety and well-being would lead the company's agenda moving forward. His fingers drummed nervously on the table, contemplating the gravity of merely drafting new directives about safety protocols. What he needed was a full-blown revolution not only in their operational protocols but in the very culture of the company. Jack took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his decision settling in. It was time to embrace a dual role, not merely as a CEO but as a leader who placed humanity first. He was certain that this shift could ripple across the company, redefining not only his relationship with Emma but nurturing the same warmth he saw in Lisa's eyes. Before rising to formulate his plan, he felt compelled to reach out to Lisa again. "What does it truly mean to lead?" he asked, his voice softer, revealing his vulnerability. "The people that you lead need to know you care," she responded, her honesty cutting through his fog of uncertainty like a lighthouse in a storm. "They need to see you as one of them." He absorbed her words, weighing them against the strategy he had imagined just moments before. It was imperative for him to bridge his ambition with genuine connection, not just with Lisa, or even Emma, but with everyone reliant on his leadership. Looking across the table at a woman who, despite her struggles, remained a beacon of strength, he left behind the last vestiges of old ideals that endorsed a singular, profit-focused vision. With newfound determination, Jack stood, ready to face the inevitable challenges ahead. He had a series of decisions to make, decisions that would set the tone for his leadership and reshape his relationship with both his company and Emma. The road ahead was fraught with complexities, and he felt his pulse quicken with each step he took. Would his approach resonate with others? Would the company stand firm amidst the inevitable backlash? As doubts filtered through his mind, one truth emerged undeniably clear. It was time to detach from the shackles of fear and embrace the unsettling clash of honesty and vulnerability. The moment of clarity gave way to another worry. If he chose this path, it could mean confronting not only the corporate world but also his own preconceived notions. Would they embrace this unexpected transformation, or would the walls he'd built come crumbling down? Jack stepped out of the cafe, the chill of the evening air awakening him to the reality of the decisions awaiting him. Time was running out, but change had to be made. The company's future and his relationship with Emma hung in the balance as he headed toward his car. Jack knew the time had come to send a message not only about safety but about the heart of his true intentions as a leader. The next day would prove critical, but the stakes felt weightier than mere business. It was about human lives, minimized and forgotten for too long. How far was he willing to go to bridge the gap between ambition and integrity? The next message he would send could alter the trajectory of everything he'd built. Jack sat in his office the next morning, the remnants of yesterday's uncertainty swirling in his mind like an unending storm. The city outside bustled with its usual rhythm, unaware of the seismic shifts occurring within him. He knew he had reached a pivotal moment not only for himself but for every employee who had put their trust in him. Today, he would unveil a vision grounded in empathy, rather than the harsh realities of profit expectations. He took a deep breath, banishing the fleeting doubts that crept in. Was he prepared to face the repercussions of this choice? The reflection in his office window showed a man committed to leading differently, yet riddled with questions. The stark contrast between his old self, the ambitious, profit-driven CEO, and the evolving leader he aspired to be loomed large. After a few moments of introspection, he began to draft a message to his team. The words flowed initially, infused with a sense of urgency and purpose. Jack spoke of a commitment to safety, transparency, and compassion, all underpinned by ethical leadership. But as he dissected the intricate layers of corporate jargon he had grown accustomed to, the familiar language felt increasingly hollow. He hesitated, fingers hovering over the keyboard. How could he convey authenticity when he was so used to speaking in the dryness of protocols and policies? Maybe the real message needed to come from a place of vulnerability, something personal that could resonate with his team. With newfound clarity, he began again. He shared his own journey, the awakening triggered by the accident, the shift from mere numbers to the lives behind each statistic. He wrote about the faces of friends and family, how they were at the heart of every decision. Most importantly, he declared that this wouldn't just be a new chapter but an entire reconfiguration of values within the company, where every individual was seen and valued. After sending the email, Jack felt a strange mix of exhilaration and dread. Would his team embrace this new direction or reject their CEO as a weak idealist? He wrestled with the fact that some stakeholders might perceive his approach as a threat to profitability. Yet, an undercurrent of conviction swelled within him, one that promised meaningful change and internal rebellion against the outdated norms that had defined his career. As the hours slipped by, Jack prepared for an all-hands meeting later that day. He meticulously updated his presentation, feeling the weight of his words more than ever before. With each slide, he challenged the status quo and aimed to illuminate the path toward a workplace that prioritized human connection. He knew he had to inspire a renewed sense of agency among his employees, allowing them to share their concerns and ideas openly without fear of implications. Finally, standing before his assembled team, Jack faced an ocean of familiar yet altered faces. He sensed their apprehension, a mix of uncertainty and curiosity. With a steady voice, he introduced his vision, highlighting that progress wasn't merely a metric on a report, but a collective journey they would undertake together. He spoke of the accident not as a distant statistic, but as a galvanizing moment, one that reminded them all of the fragility of life and the urgent need for compassion in their work. It was, he insisted, time for the company to rewrite its legacy. After the presentation, the silence was palpable, quickly followed by an outpouring of questions and discussions. He could see their hesitation transform into engagement, as his team began to imagine a future rooted in respect and safety, a future they could build together. But skepticism still lurked in the shadows of their excitement, and Jack knew he couldn't ignore it. He would need to prove himself continuously, building trust in this new vision. Was he up for the task? The relentless challenge of authentic leadership in a world still shimmering with cynicism. As he left the meeting room, his heart raced. He was on the precipice of something monumental, teetering between hope and doubt. As he rounded the corner, he bumped into Lisa once again, and their eyes locked. "What now?" she asked, curious and supportive. "It's just the beginning," he replied, the enormity of the challenge weighing on him while a wisp of hope flickered in his chest. Jack could already feel the scrutiny building beyond the walls of their office. The true test of his resolve lay ahead. Would the board and shareholders support him? The wounds of change were never clean, and he braced himself for the battles that awaited. Determined, he stepped out of the shadows, ready to face whatever came next. The only question that remained was, how much of himself was he ready to invest in forging this new path? Jack's steps echoed in the empty hallway as he made his way back to his office, the buzz of his team's spirited conversation still resonating in his mind. Each word spoken at the meeting, questions, concerns, and tentative support felt like a shimmering thread, weaving together a fragile fabric of trust. Yet, the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavily on his shoulders. The road to transformation was littered with obstacles, and he needed to navigate them deftly. As he settled back into his chair, Jack turned to his notes. They revealed not just strategies but the essence of what he was striving to build. The shift from a profit-centric approach to an empathetic one was not solely about policy changes. It was about a fundamental reawakening within himself and the corporate culture he managed. He realized he had much more to discover about his new leadership identity. He took a moment to reflect. What did it mean to lead with authenticity? The reflections of last night replayed in his mind, a tapestry of emotions that illuminated both uncertainties and possibilities. This was no longer about corporate growth charts but about the very essence of the human experience embedded in every employee's journey. If his true intention was to connect, he would have to face uncomfortable truths about himself and the legacy he was willing to leave behind. After a few moments, he decided to reach out to Lisa again. He needed someone who understood the driving forces behind his vision, someone who could be both a sounding board and a constructive challenger. Picking up his phone, he tapped her number, feeling a surge of vulnerability wash over him as he waited for her to answer. "Hey Jack, what's up?" Her warm, familiar voice soothed his racing thoughts. "I've been reflecting on our last meeting," he began, trying to articulate his thoughts. "I want to go deeper, not just with the employees but with the board. I need your insight on how to align the vision with tangible goals that resonate both ethically and profitably." Lisa paused momentarily, her silence prompting Jack to question if he had overstepped. "I'll be honest, Jack," she replied carefully. "While your vision is commendable, the board is predicated on numbers. They won't accept just a heartfelt speech without a solid plan. You need to present them with metrics, a roadmap that demonstrates how your vision translates into real results." His heart sank slightly at the realization. Metrics. He understood their importance but struggled with the thought of reducing his vision to mere numbers. Yet, the challenge exhilarated him. If he could merge compassion with a clear strategy, it could be revolutionary. "Let us meet this weekend," he suggested, his determination renewed. "We'll create a plan that intertwines our ethical goals with the performance metrics that matter to them." "Sounds good. I believe in what you're doing, Jack, but we need to make sure the narrative reflects that," she encouraged. "I'll brainstorm with you, and we'll make it robust enough to withstand scrutiny." As they hung up, Jack felt an unexpected surge of clarity. There was a path forward, albeit with complexity. This was more than just a corporate pivot. It was a test of his ability to integrate passion and profitability without losing the essence of his vision. Determined, he spent the rest of the afternoon diving into research comparing successful companies that thrived on ethical leadership alongside sound financial performance. Insight began to emerge as he analyzed their frameworks, compelling him to rethink traditional business ideologies. He recognized his firm, too, could thrive without compromising its core values. Yet, with each newfound strategy, doubt began to creep in. Would these plans be enough to convince seasoned investors who thrived on metrics? The landscape was fraught with challenge and opportunity, and as he scribbled notes, Jack felt both hopeful and apprehensive as the sun dipped below the skyline, casting shadows through his office window. He understood that this was just the beginning. The true test would come within the boardroom walls, where he would confront not just skepticism about his vision, but also the shadow of his past self, an ideal he wrestled to redefine. What if they questioned his motives, saw him as naive, or attempted to undermine his newfound philosophy? The stakes were real, and the uncertainty now palpable pushed him forward into uncharted territory. In that moment of clarity, Jack realized he wasn't just fighting for a vision. He was about to confront the stark realities of leadership itself. The time had come for him to face the board, but he felt a nagging question clawing at his resolve. Was he prepared enough for what lay ahead? The weekend arrived quickly, but the sensation of impending confrontation weighed heavily on Jack as he prepared for his meeting with Lisa. He filled his time with endless research, scanning reports and case studies, hoping to uncover that perfect balance between ethical principles and financial strategies that would satisfy the board's demands. Each new insight brought another layer of complexity, and soon, the bright sparks of ideas morphed into overwhelming anxiety. As he sat down in his favorite coffee shop, a place where the atmosphere buzzed with energy, yet still offered a sense of seclusion, Jack reminded himself of the importance of this weekend. His meeting with Lisa was not just about strategy. It was about forging a sustainable journey towards the leadership he envisioned. He was tired of seeing the world through the narrow lens of financial obligation. However, he also couldn't afford to dismiss those very numbers that would gauge his success. Minutes before Lisa arrived, Jack crafted a quick outline on his laptop. He highlighted key performance indicators that could align with his empathetic vision. Metrics like employee satisfaction surveys, retention rates, and community engagement could serve as tangible proof of the culture shift he aspired to initiate. Yet, as he typed, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely a frame for the bigger picture of human experience. When Lisa entered, the vibrant atmosphere seemed to dim momentarily as Jack locked eyes with her. She wasted no time diving into a discussion filled with vigor, challenging Jack's assumptions and pushing back on his ideas, but always with a constructive lens. Over cappuccinos and pastries, they refined his outline, crafting it into a robust strategy that blended compassion with clarity. Together, they identified metrics that spoke not just to financial outcomes but the essence of what it meant to work with heart and mind. Yet, amidst the external collaboration, internally a tempest brewed. In the shadow of honest discussions, deeper questions began to surface. Was he truly equipped to implement such radical shifts? Every time Lisa questioned a lack of clarity in his proposals, Jack felt an old fear creep back in the nagging thought that perhaps he wasn't cut out for this new vision. The trailblazing leader he wanted to become felt increasingly like a mirage. Jack, don't lose sight of your core values. Lisa's voice cut through his spiraling thoughts as she leaned in. The board will see this as an extension of you. Your authenticity is your strength, but you need to articulate it confidently. If that means navigating through metrics, then embrace it, frame it as an integral part of your mission. Her words struck him with an unexpected weight. Could it be that willingness to blend his ethos with hard numbers didn't negate his vision but rather elevated it? Each objection and each challenge brought forth a clearer understanding of self. The sun began to set outside, casting a golden hue over their table, illuminating Jack's renewed resolve. Fueled by the dialogue and deepened by perspective, he began to realize he wasn't just preparing for the board meeting. He was unearthing layers of himself that he had long buried: the intuitive leader, the advocate, and most importantly, the person who could show his true self. On the way back to his office, Jack felt a confidence that had eluded him. He could no longer be confined to a corporate persona. He needed to show up fully, not just as a CEO but as a human being. The stakes weren't solely concerning the company's profits or losses anymore. They were now tied to his own identity. As he approached his office, anticipation surged within him. This moment felt pivotal, an apex where transformation intersected with vision, and Jack, knowing he could no longer remain in the comfortable shadow of self-doubt. He needed to step boldly into the boardroom, equipped with a narrative that was both heartfelt and fortified by rigor. The echoes of Lisa's encouragement reverberated in his mind like a mantra. He was prepared to confront not just the board, but the skepticism that once plagued him. Suddenly, the weight of doubt that encumbered him felt lighter, replaced by a burgeoning belief in his potential. But alongside this belief simmered anxiety, a pressing question hovering on the periphery. Would he find the strength to advocate fiercely for his vision, or would he falter when faced with the staunch conservatism nestled within the boardroom? The morning of the board meeting arrived, casting an early daylight that felt both promising and fraught with uncertainty. Jack stood before the mirror, adjusting his tie, watching the reflection of a man who was on the verge of something monumental. In those quiet moments, he wasn't just preparing to represent a fiscal plan. He was preparing to unveil his vision, a representation of who he was becoming, not just as a professional but as a person. As he walked into the corporate headquarters, the fluorescent lights illuminated the way ahead, symbolizing the clarity he sought amidst the turmoil of his thoughts. Each step echoed the rhythm of his heart, a constant reminder of the weight he was carrying, both personally and professionally. Today wasn't merely another presentation. It felt like a rite of passage, one that could redefine his legacy. Before entering the boardroom, Jack took a deep breath. He focused on the metrics he had spent so much time crafting, sure, but it was the underlying narrative he had built around those numbers that truly resonated with him. They represented his ideals, the vision of a more empathetic organization. Yet, self-doubt still threatened to find its way through the cracks of his resolve. When he finally stepped into the boardroom, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. His colleagues took their seats, each one representing a facet of the corporation's culture he yearned to shift. Their eyes fell on him, scrutinizing not just the content but the messenger delivering it. He sat at the head of the table, surrounded by those who had historically valued profits above principles. Today, Jack began, his voice steadying as he shifted from uncertainty to purpose. We have the opportunity to reshape our future in a way that aligns with both our financial goals and our values. He introduced the strategy they had developed, carefully outlining the measurable objectives but also weaving in stories from the employees that would be affected, the hardworking individuals whose experiences served to validate his vision. He watched as their expressions morphed from skepticism to mild interest, particularly when he presented the data reflecting heightened employee satisfaction correlated with reduced turnover. Lisa's earlier advice echoed in his mind. This was not just about the numbers, but the humanity behind them. As he engaged in a back and forth with the board members, an unexpected shift occurred. Rather than encountering mere resistance, there was a flicker of curiosity. Questions began to transform from sharp critiques into dialogues that explored the ramifications of his vision. Jack felt something inside him shift. This wasn't just his battle anymore. It was a shared inquiry into the future of their company. However, as the discussion intensified, so did the stakes. One board member, known for his hardline approach, leaned forward. Jack, what makes you think our investors will embrace this change? They want results. Show them results, not ideals, he challenged. The weight of that confrontation hung in the air, compressing Jack's thoughts. Here, directly confronting him, was a reflection of his own deepest fears, the fear of prioritizing vision over hard numbers, the fear of not being taken seriously. It was a moment that could extinguish the light he had ignited or fuel it to blaze brighter. Because, Jack replied, his voice gaining strength, we can create results that encompass both our values and our bottom line. This isn't about ignoring our investors. It's about showing them the way forward, a way that will secure our company's sustainability for years to come. Each word rang with clarity and purpose, silencing the previously scattered doubts. As the meeting progressed, there were moments of agreement, flickering glances of understanding amidst the board members. Jack had found a way to articulate his vision in a language they could understand, one that didn't shy away from numbers but embraced them alongside the stories of their people. By the close of the meeting, he felt exhilarated yet unnerved. There would be next steps and further deliberations, but something had shifted. The conversation had begun. Amidst this energy, however, a question lingered. Could he maintain this newfound clarity in the face of ongoing skepticism from the more traditional members of the board? Anticipation clung to him as he left the room, emboldened yet aware that his journey was far from over. The real test lay ahead, not just in the boardroom but in nurturing this new part of himself, a leader who was unafraid to intertwine metrics with empathy, leveraging both to craft a company narrative that reflected authentic values. Jack stepped outside, heart racing with possibility, as he anticipated the next confrontation that awaited him on this unusual path he had carved. Would he be capable of championing this vision for the long haul, or would he falter at the first major hurdle? Jack leaned against the cool marble outside the boardroom, absorbing the residual tension from the meeting. A sense of elation washed over him, yet beneath it lurked an unsettling doubt. Had he really turned the tide, or was this moment merely a fleeting swell against an unyielding current? The office buzzed around him, a hive of activity and ambition. Yet he felt detached, an architect inching toward his vision even as the structural foundations risked collapse. He returned to his desk, replaying the dialogue in his mind. The exchange with the hardline board member lingered like an uninvited echo, stirring questions that gnawed at his resolve. Could he bridge the gap between ideals and unwavering pragmatism? It was an internal struggle that demanded resolution. As the weeks rolled on, Jack meticulously prepared for the follow-up meeting, filled with palpable enthusiasm but shadowed by expectation. He immersed himself in industry reports and competitor analyses, striving to equip himself with hard-hitting data that could quell dissent. Yet, as he crafted his notes, a silent conflict simmered. The more he leaned into metrics, the more he feared losing the genuine human element that defined his vision. Would he lose the very essence of what he sought to change? On the day of the follow-up meeting, Jack arrived early, pacing the conference room as he rehearsed. Questions looped in his mind. If he presented hard data, Would he still evoke the empathy he so desperately wanted to convey? He understood that numbers were critical but wondered if they could coexist with his narrative. When the board members shuffled in, their business attire reflecting a spectrum of attitudes from skeptical to curious, Jack felt the weight of expectation settle on his shoulders again. He glanced at Lisa for reassurance, but she merely nodded, her expression both encouraging and enigmatic. Was she fully aware of the line he was walking? "Thank you for gathering again," he began, consciously maintaining a tone of calm competence. "Today, I'd like to delve deeper into how our values translate not just into employee satisfaction but to enhanced shareholder value." He forged ahead, presenting a blend of well-researched financial forecasts coupled with poignant stories from employees, a delicate dance between head and heart. Heads nodded, and murmurs of interest emerged, but he sensed the board's collective breath held tight against the promise of change. Jack pivoted to the crux of his presentation. Case studies from companies that had successfully merged ethical practices with financial growth. These examples illustrate that embracing a purpose-driven approach can enhance profitability while cultivating a loyal workforce, he asserted, feeling a surge of determination to make his case resonate clearly. However, his gut churned with trepidation. Would they grasp the necessity of that marriage? Then, much like before, the hardline board member raised his hand again. But Jack was ready. "Numbers are crucial, I agree," Jack interjected before the member could pose his challenge. "But we are also in a time where customer loyalty and employee engagement are tied to how we respond to ethical considerations. The two are not mutually exclusive." He felt the slight shift in energy as he laid out projections, interlacing the dialogue with personal anecdotes that humanized the statistics. Suddenly, a realization struck him. This wasn't just about presenting a case. It was about sharing a vision, one that resonated on a personal level. As the session unfolded, he allowed himself to be vulnerable, admitting his own dilemmas and aspirations, how he once feared the executive ladder's relentless climb would strip him of empathy but now believed it could be a potent catalyst for change. By the time he concluded, the room was alive with varying responses. Some board members seemed visibly moved, while others appeared to wrestle with the implications. Jack could feel the tension pulse in the air. The moment was fraught with potential yet fraught with uncertainty. What this company needs, Jack, is not just vision but a foolproof strategy to present to the investors, the hardline member shot back, the tone still challenging but edged with something different. Was it curiosity or acknowledgement? Jack's heart raced. The meeting was turning into a battleground. He sensed the undercurrents of conflict intertwining with emerging support, and he stood at the precipice of a new realization. His quest for authenticity and challenge could redefine not just the company, but his entire self-concept. Could he truly reconcile the ideals he held with the hard realities of corporate governance? The stakes continued to rise, as did the suspense of whether he could navigate this landscape and emerge not just as a leader, but as a transformational force. A million thoughts cascaded in a rapid stream as he concluded his closing remarks. But just before the inevitable questions could arise, he asked himself if the true measure of success lay in the numbers alone or if it resided within the connections and changes he had ignited. With that thought hanging in the charged atmosphere, Jack took a deep breath, sensing that battles were indeed ahead, ones that would require more than just statistics but a steady commitment to his vision. What lay beyond this meeting felt monumental, shaping the very core of who he was becoming as a leader. Once again, he faced the prospect of unknown challenges, but this time, he felt he might have the strength to influence the future. Would he be able to hold fast to both heart and mind amidst the tightening grip of corporate beliefs? The next confrontation loomed ahead, waiting to test his resolve further. Jack walked out of the boardroom, the air heavy with a sense of unease. The weight of the hardline member's challenge clung to his thoughts, a persistent shadow that threatened to eclipse the small victories he had just achieved. Clenching his fists, he made his way back to his office, the polished floors reflecting the intricate dance of doubt and determination unfolding within him. The meeting may have marked a step forward, but the specter of skepticism loomed large. His desk remained cluttered with notes and reports, yet it felt less like a sanctuary and more like a battleground. Fragments of conversations echoed in his mind, prodding at his resolve. Did he truly have the genuine support necessary to push his vision forward? Or were he and Lisa merely fighting against a tide of entrenched corporate conservatism? Feeling restless, Jack closed his office door and leaned back in his chair, allowing the silence to envelop him. He took a moment to reflect on his motivations. Not for the company, but for himself. What did he truly want to accomplish? Was it about prestige, or was he earnestly invested in making a difference? As this inner dialogue unfolded, a sense of clarity washed over him. He sought more than numbers. He aimed to create a culture where empathy and success coexisted. This reinforced goal urged him to reassess his strategies. If the board members needed solid plans alongside his vision, what if he paired the two more effectively? He jotted down bold, groundbreaking ideas about potential initiatives that could foster both engagement and profit. Brainstorming invigorated him. Following his instincts for a more profound organizational narrative felt like striking a chord he never knew existed. Days turned into late nights filled with research and creative problem-solving. The fear of failure lingered, but it was matched by excitement. Each strategy he drafted challenged him to blend the analytical precision he had always leaned on with the emotional intelligence he desired to cultivate. He discovered that his past experiences in the field, candid conversations with employees telling him their stories, could serve as learning tools to refine his plans further. This all required vulnerability, a facet he realized was vital for creating authentic connections within the corporate machinery. His meetings with Lisa took on new energy. Instead of presenting isolated ideas, Jack sought her input, viewing her as a critical ally in his quest for change. What if we frame this not just as a strategy for profit but for morale? He asked her one afternoon, brandishing a pile of ideas. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, and they exchanged notes, debating and enhancing each other's perspectives. With the next board meeting approaching, Jack felt an adrenaline surge. The previous hesitations began dissolving as the thrill of potential success coursed through him. He meticulously scripted his presentation, anew with an emphasis on the synergy between employee well-being and financial gains. Yet, even as he prepared, self-doubt threatened to rise again in the back of his mind. What if the hardline member or others did not resonate with the ideas he was passionate about? 2 nights before the meeting, he lay awake, conscience wrestling against the need for professionalism. The weight of his vision was heavier than any statistic, and he could feel the stakes escalating. He suddenly remembered his late-night philosophy. Ideas are not just visions. They require action, trial, and sometimes fierce confrontation. Would he be able to stand tall against dissenting voices, ardently defending not just numbers, but the very heartbeat of the company, the people? As dawn broke, illuminating the city beyond his window, a fierce determination engulfed him. The outcome of the meeting could either steer the company toward a paradigm shift or reaffirm its outdated views. Jack knew the time had come to face his fears and champion the changes he had championed for weeks. As he gathered his notes and rehearsed his delivery one last time, just before locking the files in his briefcase, a pertinent question lingered. Would this battle redefine not only the company, but also him? Tomorrow would bring an answer, and for the first time, he felt ready to embrace whatever challenges awaited him. The moment was set. The desire for change had ignited. Would he stand firm in the face of resistance, or would he falter, allowing corporate winds to shift his course? The boardroom felt suffocating as Jack stepped inside, his heart racing beneath the polished exterior he had crafted over the years. He could almost hear the murmurs of skepticism from the hardline member as he positioned himself at the front of the table. Each board member wore their usual masks of professionalism, yet Jack sensed the underlying currents. Some were poised for a fight, others simply indifferent. He opened with an anecdote. Last week, I spoke with one of our longtime employees. They mentioned how a small recognition made them feel valued, and honestly, it shifted my perspective. As he spoke, he watched their faces, searching for signs of engagement or resistance. That craving for connection, the empathy he had longed to incorporate into his corporate strategy, was palpable. As Jack delved deeper into his presentation, he challenged the status quo head-on, systematically merging numbers with narratives. He outlined the projections of morale-boosting initiatives that tied to tangible financial results, painting a picture of a more human-centered workplace. Yet, as he presented, the opposition he had anticipated arose in the form of aggressive questioning from the very member who had unsettled him before. Isn't it naive to think that employee well-being translates directly into profit? We're here to maximize revenue, not become a charity, the hardliner retorted, eyes piercing. Jack felt a jolt of anxiety but took a deep breath, grounding himself in the knowledge he had accrued. Actually, I believe it is precisely the opposite, he countered. Investing in our employees' happiness can create loyal advocates for our brand. Happy employees lead to satisfied customers, and satisfied customers drive profits. There was a tension in the air, but Jack realized that the confrontation, rather than stifling him, sparked a new layer of determination. This wasn't just a fight for policy change. It was about redefining the company's soul. As the discussion unfolded, Jack found himself weaving responses that were passionate yet factual, supported by research and personal testimonials. It was more than just a presentation. This was a cause he was willing to defend. Each response he crafted was a reflection of his evolving self. He had shifted from a hesitant player in corporate strategy to a steadfast advocate for a new legacy. The conversation swirled, veering from agreement to disagreement, yet it felt raw and visceral, as if a dormant energy was awakening amongst them, even among the skeptics. Jack caught Lisa's eye across the table. Her nod reinvigorated his resolve. This was what he wanted: a meaningful dialogue exposing different perspectives while energizing his own vision. The meeting progressed, and Jack could sense the shift, albeit slight. Some members began to lean into the ideas he presented, sparking discussions among themselves. The hardliner's harshness morphed into a more tentative scrutiny. What Jack didn't know was that his courage was making ripples in more than just the meeting room. The walls of conservatism were starting to crack. That as they wrapped up, Jack felt a wave of fatigue wash over him, but it was accompanied by a flicker of hope. He had stood face to face with resistance and had turned a moment of potential confrontation into a budding dialogue. Yet, doubt lingered in his mind. Would this transformation last, or would it regress into the familiar paths of skepticism? Stepping out of the boardroom, he took a moment to reflect. The boldness he had dared in the face of challenge marked a turning point. This newfound courage felt transformative, but there was still so much work to do. He needed to solidify alliances and ensure that the flicker of change did not extinguish in the weeks to come. As he turned back toward his office, a new question gnawed at him. Could he maintain momentum, or would complacency suffocate the very seeds of transformation he had planted? The stakes were rising, and he knew that the true test was yet to unfold. Would he be ready for the inevitable twists ahead, or would the current of reality sweep him away? The air in Jack Thompson's office buzzed with anticipation. It had been weeks since that pivotal board meeting, where he had laid bare his vision for a company that not only pursued profit but prioritized the well-being of its people. Today, he would present the results of the initiatives he had launched, efforts to merge compassion with corporate responsibility. He steeled himself, ready to face the scrutiny he knew would come. Jack stood before a room filled with his executive team, each member looking to him for leadership and direction. But now, he felt different, not just a CEO, but a leader driven by purpose. Today, he began, I want to share the results of our journey toward integrating employee satisfaction with our financial goals. He projected graphs illustrating improved retention rates and enhanced employee engagement metrics. As he navigated through the data, he was met with notable nods and murmurs of approval, a far cry from the skepticism that once lurked in these same seats. He introduced stories from employees who had felt the direct impact of the new policies. These are not just numbers on a spreadsheet. They are real lives we are changing, he stated, tapping into the emotional foundation he had fought so hard to establish. Beyond metrics, Jack had come to realize that numbers could tell a story, but those stories could inspire action, create connections, and reshape the company's identity. Midway through the presentation, he sensed the board's cautiously positive shift. No longer was he just advocating for change. He was demonstrating the tangible benefits of empathy in a corporate environment. The hardline board member who had once been his greatest skeptic raised a hand as Jack concluded. He looked serious, but the familiar intensity had softened. Jack, I have to admit, I didn't expect these results. It's clear you're onto something valuable here. The room held its breath. Jack had not just weathered the storm but had also turned potential adversaries into allies. His mind raced as he considered the implications of this moment. Perhaps he could summon the courage to push further to advocate for an even bolder vision that involved community engagement or carbon neutrality in their manufacturing processes. As the meeting wrapped, the board members applauded, a sound that resonated like a long-lost melody, returning to him after years of silence. Their scattered doubts had evaporated in the wake of proven successes, replaced by an interest in what else they could accomplish together. Jack felt a wave of exhilaration wash over him. This feedback was validation of his transformation. For perhaps the first time, he did not feel the relentless grip of ambition crushing him. Instead, he felt liberated, equipped to lead with integrity. When he left the meeting room, he headed straight for his daughter's school. The air in the office had been filled with numbers and strategies. But Emma, his daughter, needed a different kind of attention. He arrived just in time for dismissal. There she was with her friends, an unfamiliar energy radiating from her. He smiled warmly as he approached, and instead of retreating into her own world, she caught his eye and greeted him with a bright smile. "Dad, you're here," Emma exclaimed, and Jack couldn't help but think back to the distance that had once defined their relationship. In that moment, he knew he hadn't just achieved success in the corporate world, but had conquered the pivotal challenge of reconnecting with the most important person in his life. As they walked together, he offered her insights from his day, the vision he had championed, the changes implemented, and how it had felt to take a stand. Emma listened, intrigued, sparking conversations about her own aspirations and passions. The dialogue flowed easily, and Jack realized that they were building a bridge he thought had long since crumbled. That evening, Jack sat down with Emma to help her with her homework, relishing their time together. One could easily see the transformation in him, not just a man at the helm of a corporate ship but a father fully present, ready to mentor an aspiring individual. This awareness was a profound growth, a culmination of his journey through ambition and compassion, a synthesis of ideals he once deemed incompatible. Jack Thompson, the CEO, had achieved more than just boardroom goals. He had conquered inner conflicts, demonstrated genuine leadership, and transformed not just a company but his relationship with his daughter. He understood now that real success lies in bridging ambition with authenticity, and that leading with heart need not come at the expense of achieving results. As he tucked Emma into bed, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had not just fostered changes in the corporate culture. He had ignited a personal renaissance. He smiled as he left the room, cognizant that this harmony, the marriage of personal and professional transformation, was the pinnacle of his achievements. No matter the challenges ahead, he realized he would face them unflinchingly, armed with clarity, compassion, and a deep-seated commitment to those around him. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is vital for bringing more inspiring narratives to life.